Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into a world of cold fireplaces, endless scrubbing, creaking staircases, and the very unfortunate realization that being a Victorian maid was somehow both incredibly important and unbelievably miserable. You are about to wake up long before the sun rises, climb freezing staircases with buckets heavy enough to make your arms regret every life decision, and spend your days making wealthy people comfortable while you yourself remain permanently tired, slightly cold, and suspiciously underfed. In other words, you probably won't survive this, or at the very least, you would spend most of your time quietly wondering whether Victorian people had simply declared war against comfort itself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, tell me your location and local time down in the comments. I always love seeing where in the world people are listening from as we drift through history together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the world feels ready to exist. There is no sunlight slipping through elegant curtains, no cheerful morning bird song welcoming you into the day, no comforting warmth waiting beside your bed. Instead, there is cold, the kind of cold that feels personal. It sneaks through cracks in the walls, settles into your blankets, and waits patiently for the exact moment your eyes open so it can remind you that comfort is not something meant for people like you. For a few quiet moments, you remain still beneath rough wool blankets, listening. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs. Wood creaks overhead. A faint draft whispers through the attic room where you sleep alongside other servants, packed together beneath a roof that feels permanently frozen. The room smells faintly of damp fabric, candle smoke, and exhaustion. You are not alone, but loneliness still somehow manages to exist here. A girl sleeping nearby shifts beneath her blanket and mutters something unintelligible before falling silent again. Someone else is already awake. You hear careful footsteps crossing wooden floorboards. No one speaks much this early. Conversation costs energy. Energy is precious. And besides, there is an unspoken understanding among servants that mornings belong to survival, because downstairs, waiting in darkness, sits an entire household that expects miracles before breakfast. You slowly sit up. Immediately, regret arrives. The cold finds every possible opening in your clothing. Victorian winters, you quickly realize, were designed by people who apparently believed warmth was morally suspicious. You rub sleep from your eyes. Your hands already feel stiff. Outside, the world remains dark enough that dawn still feels theoretical, but your workday has already begun. You dress quickly. There is no luxurious wardrobe waiting for you, no silk robe, no leisurely moment beside a mirror deciding what version of yourself you want to present to society. No, you have practical clothing, simple, dark, built almost entirely for work, an apron that will somehow become dirty almost immediately no matter how hard you try. Shoes that never feel entirely dry. Layers that somehow fail to keep you warm despite existing specifically for warmth. You move quietly downstairs. The staircase creaks like it disapproves of your existence. The house around you remains asleep, and that, strangely enough, is exactly the point. Your job depends on invisibility. The wealthy family upstairs should ideally wake into a house that already feels perfect. Warm fireplaces, clean rooms, fresh water, breakfast nearly prepared, shoes polished, dust somehow defeated, reality itself slightly rearranged to make their lives easier. And none of this should appear difficult. Ideally, no one notices how much work happened while they slept, which means your day begins long before theirs. Your first task is the fireplaces, because wealthy Victorians enjoyed warmth very much. Creating that warmth, unfortunately, belongs to you. You kneel beside yesterday's ashes. Cold soot stains your fingers immediately. Ash clings to everything. Your clothes, your hands, your patience. The fireplace must be cleaned before new coal is brought. There is a rhythm to it. Scrape, sweep, lift, repeat. Again, again, again. Somehow the soot finds your face anyway. You do not ask how. You have stopped asking many questions. Then comes coal. Heavy, messy, relentlessly inconvenient. You carry buckets through dim hallways while trying not to wake anyone upstairs. There is something strangely impressive about how Victorian houses manage to contain endless stairs exactly when your arms begin giving up. Every room means another fire. Every fire means more work. And somehow, dawn still refuses to arrive. You move carefully, quickly, quietly, because servants exist in contradiction. You must work endlessly while also somehow remaining invisible. Be efficient but unnoticed. Present but silent. useful but forgettable. If you do your job perfectly, no one comments. If you fail even slightly, suddenly everyone remembers your name. Eventually, the kitchen begins to wake. The cook arrives. Already annoyed, Victorian kitchens possess a unique atmosphere made entirely from heat, urgency, and the possibility of being judged for slicing bread incorrectly. Pots begin moving. Water heats. Instructions arrive quickly. Bring this, carry that, move faster, not that fast. You begin preparing water for washing. There are no taps delivering endless hot water, no comforting shower waiting upstairs. Everything must be heated manually. Everything must be carried manually. Everything somehow weighs more than expected. You carry heavy containers upstairs. Careful not to spill, careful not to slip, careful not to make noise. Your shoulders ache before sunrise, which feels unfair. Surely exhaustion should wait until at least midday, but Victorian servant life has no interest in fairness. The family upstairs still sleeps peacefully, wrapped in warmth, protected from drafts, probably dreaming pleasant dreams involving gardens or music or absolutely no coal whatsoever. Meanwhile, downstairs, you and the other servants are quietly constructing their morning from exhaustion, and breakfast has not even started. Someone rings a bell upstairs. The sound slices through the house. Sharp, immediate, demanding. You glance toward the ceiling. The day has officially begun. Somewhere above you, someone wealthy has opened their eyes and decided they require something. Tea perhaps? Hot water, clothing, help. The exact request almost matters less than the speed at which you must answer it, because delays become criticism, criticism becomes trouble, and trouble feels dangerously close to unemployment. You straighten your apron, take a slow breath, and begin moving again. Outside, dawn finally begins softening the sky. A weak pale light creeps across windows. The city wakes slowly, but you feel as though you have already lived half a day. Your stomach quietly reminds you that you have not eaten. Breakfast exists. Technically, just not for you yet. Not until others are served. Not until chores are finished. Not until someone else's comfort comes first. Again. And somehow this is only the beginning. The morning stretches ahead like an impossible mountain built entirely from laundry, coal dust, staircases, and instructions shouted from distant rooms. You are tired already. The house is finally waking, and you are only beginning to understand exactly why being a Victorian maid truly, completely, absolutely sucked. The house, now fully awake, develops a personality. Unfortunately, it is the personality of someone endlessly demanding. The bells begin ringing in different corners of the building like tiny warnings of incoming trouble. One sharp ring from the drawing room, another from upstairs, a third from somewhere far enough away that you briefly consider pretending not to hear it. But no, Victorian servant life allows very little pretending. You move quickly through hallways, still carrying the faint smells of coal smoke and polished wood. Morning light finally reaches the windows, though somehow the brightness never quite reaches downstairs. Because this is where servants live, below stairs. And, as you are beginning to understand, below nearly everyone else, too. The grand front rooms belong to the family. Beautiful carpets, tall mirrors, soft chairs nobody actually seems allowed to relax in. Decorative clocks ticking quietly in rooms that somehow always smell faintly expensive. But your world exists mostly where guests never look. Narrow hallways, low ceilings, kitchen heat, storage cupboards, servants' staircases hidden like architectural secrets. In Victorian households, entire systems existed to make sure wealth appeared effortless, and that illusion depends heavily on people like you staying out of sight. Invisible effort creates visible comfort. You learn this quickly. There are rules. So many rules. Rules about speaking, rules about standing, rules about eye contact, rules about where you may walk, when you may speak, and occasionally how loudly you are apparently allowed to breathe. You are expected to be respectful, quiet, efficient.
A person somehow capable of carrying absolute authority while barely raising their voice. The butler manages the male staff and oversees much of the household order. Then there is the housekeeper, and if the butler feels intimidating, the housekeeper feels like someone personally appointed by exhaustion itself. She notices everything. Dust you missed. Wrinkles in cloth that a task completed 98% correctly instead of perfectly. And perfection, unfortunately, seems to be the only acceptable standard. You quickly learn that disappointing the housekeeper feels oddly similar to disappointing an entire civilization. Then come cooks, kitchen maids, scullery maids, housemaids, footmen, laundry workers. garden staff, coachmen, an entire hidden society working endlessly behind elegant walls. Each person knows their role. Each role comes with expectations, and you, near the bottom, possess very little authority and a great deal of responsibility. It is a terrible combination. Someone hands you silver to polish. Victorian people truly adored silver. Not practical silver. Not ordinary silver. Complicated silver. Decorative silver. The sort of silver designed specifically to gather fingerprints moments after cleaning. You begin polishing spoons, trays, and serving pieces until your reflection stares back at you looking just as tired as you feel. Somewhere upstairs, laughter drifts through the ceiling. The family is enjoying breakfast. You smell warm bread, tea, eggs, perhaps bacon. Something sweet. Your stomach reacts immediately. But downstairs, meals for servants feel considerably less glamorous. Cold leftovers if you are lucky. Tea when available. Bread sturdy enough to possibly survive minor natural disasters. You quietly learn not to complain. Complaining changes very little. Besides, everyone else here seems equally tired. That becomes strangely comforting. You are not alone in this. Not exactly. There is another maid near your age. Quick hands. Sharp sense of humor. The type of person who somehow finds energy to joke, despite carrying impossible workloads. She whispers something while stacking plates. Don't worry, she says quietly. After a few months, you stop noticing how tired you are. You stare at her. That somehow feels less comforting than intended. Still, small moments of humor matter. Tiny conversations in kitchens. Quick smiles during impossible mornings. Shared frustration over muddy boots that appear to multiply overnight. Servants survive partly through companionship, partly through routine, and partly through the strange human ability to adapt to nearly anything, even unreasonable amounts of stair climbing. Especially stair climbing. Victorian houses appear designed by people with deeply confusing opinions about vertical movement. Everything important sits upstairs. Everything heavy somehow begins downstairs, meaning your entire existence becomes a repetitive cycle of carrying things between floors. Coal upstairs, laundry downstairs, water upstairs, dirty dishes downstairs, trays upstairs, requests downstairs. Your legs begin developing opinions about this arrangement, none positive. At some point during the day, you accidentally enter the wrong hallway. A small mistake, nothing dramatic, but immediately someone corrects you. Servants use servants' corridors. The front spaces belong to the family and important visitors. Appearance matters. Hierarchy matters. Invisible boundaries exist everywhere. You begin noticing them constantly. Doors you never use. Rooms where you only enter to clean. Conversations stopping the moment servants appear. The strange loneliness of being physically close to people while existing in entirely separate worlds. The family upstairs may know your name, or perhaps not. Sometimes, servants remain simply girl or maid, useful, necessary, temporary. You are present in their lives, while somehow also invisible inside them. And yet, despite everything, work continues. Because work always continues. Afternoon arrives quietly. The house settles into its daily rhythm. Shoes polished, beds made, dust attacked. Fireplaces maintained. Someone requests tea. Someone else requests warm water. Someone complains about something that feels impossibly minor, considering how much effort already went into the day. You nod politely. Apologize. Fix the issue. Move on. Because survival here depends partly on endurance, partly on silence, and partly on learning which frustrations deserve your energy. Most do not. Outside, sunlight briefly spills through windows. You catch sight of people walking in the street. Shopkeepers, workers, children running past. For a moment, the world beyond the house feels strangely distant, free. You wonder what it feels like to wake without bells dictating your existence. To choose where your day goes. To sit still. The thought disappears quickly. Someone calls your name. Another task waits. Always another task. You smooth your apron and continue. Because now you understand something important. Being a Victorian maid does not simply mean working hard. It means existing inside an invisible machine. A machine powered by routine, hierarchy, silence, and impossible expectations. And somehow, unbelievably, tomorrow will begin before sunrise all over again. By now, morning no longer feels like an event. It feels like survival with chores attached. The bells upstairs continue their relentless campaign against peace. Fireplaces demand constant attention. And somehow every room in the house develops an immediate and urgent need for your presence at exactly the same time. But now, another challenge quietly enters the day. Breakfast? Not your breakfast, of course. That would be far too reasonable. No, Victorian breakfast belongs to the people upstairs. The family wrapped in comfort, discussing weather, visitors, and matters that somehow never involve carrying coal before sunrise. You, meanwhile, become part of the invisible machinery making the meal appear effortlessly perfect. The kitchen transforms into organized chaos. Heat presses against the walls, steam rises into the air, metal clinks against metal. The cook moves with the focused intensity of someone who has absolutely no patience for mistake, and unfortunately for you, breakfast seems to contain an impressive number of opportunities for mistakes. Toast too dark? Problem. Tea not hot enough? Problem. Eggs wrong? Apparently civilization itself may collapse. You arrive carrying fresh water only to be immediately redirected. No standing around, someone says. Which feels mildly unfair because you had been standing around for approximately 4 seconds. You begin slicing bread. Carefully. Even bread somehow contains rules. Not too thick, not too thin. Even. Consistent. Victorian households possess remarkable confidence in the importance of symmetrical toast. The cook supervises everything. There is very little room for hesitation. You move faster, plates warm beside the stove. Tea is prepared. Jam appears. Butter is arranged neatly enough to suggest emotional stability. And trays begin forming for upstairs service. If the family is wealthy enough, breakfast may involve multiple dishes. Eggs, fish, bread, cold meats, tea, coffee, fruit when available, pastries, if the household feels particularly ambitious. Meanwhile, your own stomach quietly negotiates with disappointment. You smell everything. Fresh bread, warm butter, roasted meat, tea steeping gently. It all feels cruelly close, like standing outside happiness while carrying plates into someone else's dining room. Eventually, someone hands you a tray. Heavy, naturally. Victorian trays never seem interested in moderation. You carefully balance cups, silverware, and breakfast items while climbing stairs with a concentration of someone carrying emotional stability itself. One wrong movement and disaster arrives. Spilled tea, broken dishes, angry employers, possibly humiliation, maybe all three. You reach the breakfast room. The family has gathered. Morning light pours softly through tall windows. The room feels warm, comfortable, quiet. A completely different universe from the frantic energy downstairs. You enter carefully, eyes lowered, movements precise. You place tea, serve food, step back. Invisible again. And this becomes one of the stranger realities of Victorian service. You witness private lives without truly participating in them. You hear conversations, family disagreements disguised as polite remarks, complaints about weather, travel plans, social gossip, discussions of dresses, money, neighbors, invitations, tiny dramas unfolding over perfectly cooked eggs. Someone barely glances towards you while asking for more tea. Someone else asks where the newspaper is. No greeting, no acknowledgement, not cruel exactly, simply normal. Servants exist in the room, while somehow remaining separate from it. Useful background movement. You become skilled at silence, at entering unnoticed, leaving unnoticed, anticipating needs before requests even arrive. A cup nearly empty? Refill it. Toast cooling? Replace it. Napkin dropped? Retrieve it. You begin understanding why servant work feels strangely exhausting in ways difficult to explain. It is not only physical labor, though there is certainly enough of that. It is constant awareness, watching everything, missing nothing, working quickly while pretending the work costs no effort. Eventually breakfast ends. Plates return downstairs. Half-eaten food remains behind. And now comes one of the more emotionally complicated parts of servant life. The leftovers. Because finally, at long last, something resembling your own breakfast appears. though perhaps breakfast deserves generous interpretation. Cold toast, bits of bread, tea that has cooled, occasional leftovers depending on the household and the day. You sit briefly with other servants. Briefly being the important word. Meals downstairs happen quickly. Conversation drifts between exhaustion and humor. Someone complains about muddy boots. Someone jokes about the master of the house ringing the bell 3 times, because apparently pouring his own tea might trigger national catastrophe. A few people laugh quietly. Small laughter matters. You are beginning to notice this. Tiny moments of relief somehow feel enormous here. Even cold tea tastes better beside company. Still, meals never last long. There is always more work, always. The breakfast dishes now tower in intimidating piles. Plates stacked endlessly. Silver needing cleaning. Tea stains waiting patiently to ruin someone's mood later. You roll up sleeves. Begin washing. Hot water helps. For approximately 5 minutes. Then your hands begin aching. Steam fogs windows. Your back complains. Somewhere upstairs, life continues comfortably. Visitors may arrive later. Lunch preparations will begin. Bedrooms still need attention. Laundry waits somewhere like a personal threat. And yet, despite all this, hunger remains strangely familiar. Because Victorian maids rarely eat well. Food exists, yes. But luxury belongs elsewhere. You eat what remains. What is affordable? What is available? Sometimes enough, sometimes not. The wealthy family upstairs may enjoy elaborate meals daily. Meanwhile, servants quietly learn endurance. Still, you notice something surprising. You are adapting, not happily, certainly not comfortably, but adapting. The stairs feel slightly less impossible. The routines more familiar. The rhythm of the household begins making sense. You know where dishes belong, which floorboards creak, which bells mean urgency, who becomes difficult before lunch. Small survival skills, the kind history rarely mentions. And somehow, beneath exhaustion, a strange pride quietly appears too. Because while no one upstairs fully notices the effort, you know something important. Without servants, none of this elegance works. No warm breakfast, no polished silver, no spotless rooms, no perfect mornings. Comfort, it turns out, requires invisible people carrying impossible amounts of work. And you are one of them now. Outside, the city moves through morning. Carts rattle past streets. Shopkeepers open doors. Smoke rises into pale skies. Life continues. Inside the house, however, another tray already waits. Someone upstairs wants more tea. Of course they do. You take a slow breath, lift the tray, and continue, because the day, unbelievably, has barely even begun. By now, you are beginning to understand something deeply unfortunate about Victorian houses. No matter how much cleaning you do, the house always seems offended that more cleaning has not yet happened. Dust exists everywhere. Coal soot exists everywhere. Mud exists everywhere. And somehow, despite everyone claiming to enjoy cleanliness, Victorian people also seem strangely committed to creating endless mess. Particularly wealthy Victorian people. Especially wealthy Victorian people wearing outdoor shoes inside expensive houses. Your day moves forward not in hours, but in chores. And today's greatest enemy arrives quietly. Dust. Fine. Persistent. Mysterious. Dust somehow appears even in rooms nobody has entered. You clean a shelf. Turn around. Look back. Dust appears emotionally stronger than before. At some point, you begin suspecting the house itself manufactures dirt out of spite. The housekeeper naturally notices everything. You are polishing furniture when she appears behind you, with the silent energy of someone materializing specifically to criticize chair legs. This corner, she says calmly. You look. Dust. Tiny dust. Almost invisible dust. Dust so small it seems to exist mostly as an insult. Yet somehow this matters enormously. Because Victorian standards of cleanliness do not simply encourage perfection. They quietly demand it. Especially from people with the least power to argue. You apologize. Immediately. Quickly, because explaining yourself never helps. The housekeeper nods once, not satisfied exactly. but no longer disappointed enough to continue standing there, which counts as success, mostly. You resume polishing. Tables, mirrors, cabinets, decorative objects whose only clear purpose appears to be collecting fingerprints. Victorian homes adore decoration. Heavy curtains, ornaments, frames, candlesticks, complicated furniture with unnecessary carved details clearly designed by people who never once considered dusting. Every elegant object represents additional work, and every overlooked detail risks criticism later. The fireplaces return too. Of course they do. They always return. Coal smoke lingers everywhere. Ash drifts quietly across surfaces moments after cleaning. Carpets collect soot. Windows darken. Furniture dulls. You begin carrying brushes and cloths like survival equipment. Because Victorian heating feels strangely committed to making houses warm and filthy at exactly the same time. You kneel beside another fireplace. Scrape ashes. Clean grates. Carry coal. Repeat. Your hands already look permanently tired. Your apron carries stains impossible to fully remove. You have reached the point where exhaustion quietly becomes background noise. Not gone. Simply familiar. The front hallway now needs attention, which means floors. Victorian floors, particularly in wealthy homes, carry expectations. Shining expectations. Reflective expectations. The kind of expectations requiring hours of labor from someone who unfortunately happens to be you. You begin scrubbing, hands aching, knees complaining, polishing wood until surfaces shine enough to suggest that no human being has ever walked across them. Which, naturally, lasts approximately 7 minutes before muddy shoes arrive. Someone enters from outside. Boots wet, mud everywhere. You stare briefly at the floor. There is a moment. A very private emotional moment. A moment in which your spirit quietly leaves the building. Then you clean it again. Because what else are you going to do? Victorian maid life occasionally feels like losing small battles repeatedly with admirable professionalism. Meanwhile, upstairs, rooms wait. Bedrooms must be refreshed. Beds remade. Water pitchers replaced. Curtains adjusted. Ashtrays emptied. Shoes polished. Every task somehow creating 3 more tasks. You move through rooms carefully. The family is not always present. Sometimes you work alone, among elegant belongings. Beautiful mirrors. Expensive dresses. Books resting beside chairs. Small luxuries everywhere. For brief moments, curiosity arrives. What would it feel like to own these things? To wake in warm rooms? To spend mornings deciding which outfit to wear, rather than how quickly you can scrub soot from a fireplace? The thoughts never last long. Work interrupts, always. You shake blankets, fold clothing, straighten pillows, dust shelves. There is a rhythm to it now. You are learning. Not because the work becomes easier, but because repetition slowly teaches survival. Even exhaustion develops routine. At midday, sunlight pushes through windows in pale strips. The house feels quieter. For a moment, a brief moment, enough to notice the ache in your shoulders, the soreness in your hands, the strange heaviness behind your eyes. You realize something quietly horrifying. You are not even halfway through the day. Lunch preparations already begin downstairs. And before that, silver. Again, always silver. You carry trays back toward the kitchen, where another maid catches your expression. Tired already? She whispers. You laugh quietly, mostly because the alternative feels dramatic. I miss sleeping, you mutter. She nods with complete seriousness. Yes, she says. I remember sleeping. The two of you share a brief laugh. A small rebellion. Tiny humor surviving inside endless labor. Moments like these matter more than expected. Because without them, the house might feel unbearably heavy. Still, time moves strangely here. Hours disappear. Tasks replace tasks. You begin noticing how invisible servant work truly feels. The family upstairs sees clean rooms. They rarely see cleaning. They enjoy polished silver, rarely think about polishing. Warm fires. Rarely consider who carried coal through freezing hallways before sunrise. Everything good in the house appears naturally, at least from their perspective. Invisible labor creates visible comfort. That is the quiet truth underneath Victorian elegance. Someone always pays for luxury, usually in sore feet and missed sleep. Afternoon drifts closer. You pass a mirror while carrying linens and barely recognize yourself. Hair hurriedly pinned, sleeves rolled, smudges of soot stubbornly surviving on your hands. You look tired. Victorian tired. The specific kind of tired, achieved only through carrying impossible workloads while pretending everything feels perfectly manageable. Still, there is pride hidden somewhere beneath the exhaustion. The house looks beautiful. Floors shine, rooms feel ordered, fireplaces burn warmly. You helped create that. No applause arrives, no congratulations. Mostly just another request shouted from somewhere upstairs. But still, the work matters. Even if nobody says it, you hear the bell ring again. Sharp, immediate, demanding. Of course, because somewhere upstairs, someone has discovered an urgent need for assistance approximately 30 seconds after you consider sitting down. You smooth your apron, stand a little straighter, and begin climbing the stairs once more. Because Victorian houses never stay clean for long. And neither, apparently, does peace. If Victorian life has already seemed exhausting, laundry day now arrives to quietly remove whatever optimism remained. You hear whispers about it before sunrise. Not fearful whispers exactly. More like the sort of respectful dread people reserve for unavoidable disasters. Rainstorms. Bad news. Very large piles of stained bedsheets. Laundry day, you quickly discover, is less of a task and more of an endurance test disguised as domestic responsibility. And unfortunately, there is no polite way to avoid it. The mountain appears in the morning, linen stacked impossibly high. Bedsheets, tablecloths, undergarments, aprons, towels, napkins, clothing belonging to people wealthy enough to somehow create impressive amounts of laundry, despite appearing to do very little themselves. You stare at the pile. The pile stares back. You suspect the pile is winning. The laundry room feels warm, uncomfortably warm. A strange contrast to the freezing hallways upstairs. Steam gathers in the air. Windows fog. The room smells faintly of soap, damp fabric, hot water, and surrender. You roll up your sleeves. Work begins. There are no washing machines, no convenient buttons, no cheerful cycle settings promising gentle care. No. Victorian laundry requires hands, buckets, heat, soap, and enough patience to survive staring at stubborn stains for unreasonable lengths of time. Water must first be heated, carried, poured, again, and again, and again. You are beginning to suspect that half of servant work simply involves transporting heavy things between impossible locations. Buckets slosh dangerously as you move. Your arms protest. Your back files several emotional complaints. Nobody listens. Once water is ready, washing begins. Scrubbing. Rinsing. Scrubbing again. Large fabric soaked in water becomes astonishingly heavy. Bedsheets feel less like cloth and more like small defeated oceans. You twist fabric to remove water. Your hands ache. Soap dries your skin. Steam sticks to everything. Hours pass strangely. Laundry seems to exist outside ordinary time. You wash one pile. Another appears. You finish towels. Now linens wait. Aprons multiply mysteriously. Stockings arrive from nowhere. The work feels endless. Someone nearby mutters, "I think rich people change clothes for entertainment." Nobody disagrees. The room erupts in quiet laughter. A dangerous kind of laughter. Tired laughter. The sort that arrives because everyone collectively understands the absurdity of the situation. You are washing clothing belonging to people upstairs, currently sitting comfortably in warm rooms, probably unaware that half the household is fighting a war against stains below stairs. Still, the work matters. Clean linens represent order, respectability, status. Victorian households cared deeply about appearances. Wrinkled tablecloth? Unacceptable. Dirty bedding? Embarrassing. Unclean clothing? Practically scandalous. And therefore someone, meaning you, must suffer heroically in extremely humid conditions to maintain civilization, or at least maintain napkins. After washing comes wringing. This part feels personally offensive. Wet sheets become ridiculously heavy. You pull, twist, lift, repeat. Your shoulders ache immediately. Your hands begin feeling oddly disconnected from your body. At some point, you become convinced your arms now belong to someone else entirely. Someone stronger, someone angrier, someone perhaps deeply resentful of fabric. Then comes hanging laundry. Outside if weather allows. Inside near warmth when it does not. Weather, unfortunately, often refuses cooperation. Rain creates problems. Cold creates problems. Wind creates entirely new categories of problems. Nothing dries quickly. Everything feels damp forever. Victorian houses seem permanently involved in negotiations with moisture. You carry sheets outside. The fresh air feels unexpectedly wonderful. Brief freedom. Sky overhead. Birds moving lazily. Street sounds drifting nearby. For a moment, you stop. Just briefly. Long enough to breathe. Long enough to remember there is a world beyond hallways and chores. People pass outside the property. Merchants. Children, workers, women carrying baskets, a dog chasing something invisible. Ordinary life continues. You wonder what it feels like to spend an afternoon choosing where to walk, to rest when tired, to eat lunch without first surviving laundry combat. Then someone calls your name. Freedom ends quickly. Back inside, more washing waits. Of course it does. The ironing arrives later. Because apparently cleaning fabric is not enough. Now fabric must also become perfectly smooth. Victorian irons are heavy metal things heated directly near fires. Simple in theory. Slightly terrifying in practice. Too cool? Wrinkles survive. Too hot? Congratulations, you have damaged expensive clothing and possibly shortened your career. No pressure. You move carefully, slowly, focusing. Sweat gathers despite the cold season outside. Your body feels split between freezing hallways and overheated workrooms. Somewhere during the afternoon, exhaustion becomes complete. Not dramatic exhaustion, not theatrical suffering. Quiet exhaustion. The kind that settles deep into bones. You stop noticing aches because there are too many to organize. Still, conversation quietly survives. Laundry rooms create strange companionship. People talk. Complain, share gossip, exchange stories. Someone mentions a house nearby dismissing servants unexpectedly. Everyone goes quiet. That fear lives everywhere. Losing work means uncertainty. No wages. Possibly nowhere to stay. Victorian life offers very little safety for people with limited money. You understand now why servants tolerate impossible conditions. Because despite the exhaustion, employment matters. Stability matters. Survival matters. Even difficult work feels safer than no work at all. Late afternoon finally arrives. The mountain of laundry shrinks, not disappears. Laundry never fully disappears, but shrinks enough to feel survivable. You stand for a moment, hands sore, arms aching, hair slightly escaping, clothes warm with steam and effort. You look exhausted. Everyone does. Someone hands around tea. Weak tea, perhaps. But tea nonetheless. You sip briefly. Just briefly. The room quieter now. The worst behind you. Outside, daylight slowly fades. Evening approaches. And somehow, unbelievably, dinner preparations already begin upstairs. Because rich people, unfortunately, insist on eating more than once. You stand again. Body protesting, mind tired, yet strangely proud too. Today, you helped transform chaos into order. Sheets cleaned, clothing saved, household restored. No one upstairs will think much about it. Clean things simply appear. That is the magic of servant life. Invisible effort, visible results. You smooth your apron, stretch sore fingers, and head toward the kitchen. Because Victorian maid life has no interest in whether you are tired, there is still more day left to survive. By now you have learned an important truth about life inside a wealthy Victorian house. Peace is temporary. Very temporary. In fact, peace lasts approximately the same amount of time as it takes someone upstairs to decide they suddenly need something carried, warmed, polished, fetched, folded, delivered, fixed, found, or somehow magically anticipated before they even ask. And this entire system revolves around one sound: the bell. At first, it seems harmless. A polite little ring drifting through the house, almost cheerful. But over time, you begin understanding the truth. The bell is not cheerful. The bell is power. The bell means someone, somewhere upstairs, requires your immediate attention, and ideally about 30 seconds ago. Every important room contains one, connected through wires running through walls to servant areas downstairs. Tiny mechanical reminders that your time does not entirely belong to you. The sound cuts sharply through kitchen noise. Ring. A pause. Then movement. Everyone immediately looks up. Someone sighs. Someone mutters something deeply uncharitable under their breath. You are assigned the morning room. Again. Of course. You smooth your apron and head upstairs. Quickly. Always quickly. Walking slowly somehow feels morally incorrect in Victorian servant culture. Running looks improper. Therefore, you master the art of urgent walking. A speed somewhere between graceful panic and controlled exhaustion. You arrive, knock gently. Enter. The mistress of the house barely glances up from her book. More tea. That is all. No drama, no emergency, no house fire. Just tea. You nod politely. Yes, ma'am. And back downstairs you go. This, you learn, becomes the rhythm of your existence. Upstairs, downstairs, kitchen, drawing room, bedroom, dining room. Back downstairs. Repeat until your legs quietly file complaints with management. The bell rings again, before you even return. Another request. Warm water this time. Someone else needs curtains adjusted. A guest has arrived unexpectedly. Shoes require polishing. A missing glove must apparently be located, as though you personally maintain communication with vanished objects. You begin suspecting wealthy households operate entirely through urgent inconvenience. The strange part is how quickly requests pile together. One bell becomes 3. 3 become 5. Someone upstairs wants breakfast trays removed. Someone downstairs needs help preparing dinner. The cook demands assistance immediately and somehow also expects you to already know what she needs. The housekeeper asks whether the silver in the dining room has been finished. You briefly consider dividing yourself into multiple people. Unfortunately, Victorian science has not yet solved that problem. The worst moments arrive when bells ring at once. Different rooms, different demands, and somehow all of them feel urgent. You and the other servants glance at each other in exhausted calculation. Who goes where? What matters most? What can wait? Mistakes happen. Sometimes someone waits longer than expected. Sometimes disappointment arrives. And disappointment upstairs has a way of floating downstairs very quickly. One afternoon you accidentally bring warm water to the wrong room. An honest mistake. Entirely understandable. But Victorian households treat small mistakes with impressive seriousness. The mistress raises an eyebrow. This was not requested here. You apologize immediately. Face warm. Embarrassment arrives fast in houses where perfection quietly feels expected. The mistake seems tiny, but tiny mistakes feel enormous when you are already tired. Back downstairs, another maid quietly whispers, "At least you didn't spill soup on a guest." You blink. What happened? She pauses. Let's just say Thomas is still emotionally recovering. You laugh. A quiet laugh. The dangerous kind. The kind you quickly hide behind professionalism. But laughter matters. Without humor, the house might swallow everyone whole. Dinner preparations grow busier, and with them comes increased bell activity. Victorian people seem particularly interested in needing things moments before guests arrive. Candles adjusted, Flowers moved, napkins replaced, coats brushed, extra chairs carried, tea prepared, tea reheated. Tea reheated again, because apparently temperature exists only briefly in wealthy homes. Someone rings simply because they misplaced spectacles, which turn out to be beside them. You retrieve them politely, because servants must master emotional diplomacy. You cannot roll your eyes, cannot sigh, cannot say, the glasses are literally next to your elbow. Instead, you smile politely, invisible, respectful, patient, even when internally you are having very different conversations. Your feet ache now, almost constantly. Stairs become personal enemies. There are so many stairs. Victorian houses seem deeply committed to unnecessary levels. Every request means climbing, descending, climbing again. At some point, your body stops asking questions and simply continues moving. Habit takes over. Bell rings. You go. Tray ready. You carry. Coal needed. You fetch. Water required. You lift. A strange rhythm settles into the day. You begin predicting requests before they happen. Evening tea? Soon. Candles before sunset? Of course. Extra blankets when weather turns colder? Naturally. Anticipation becomes survival. Good servants notice patterns, notice moods, notice small habits. The master dislikes cold tea. The mistress dislikes noise near her sitting room. Guests prefer fresh towels. Children spill things constantly. You observe, adapt, learn, and somewhere along the way, something unexpected happens. You become good at this, not because you enjoy it. Certainly not because it feels easy, but because repetition builds skill. You move faster now. Carry trays steadily. Avoid mistakes more often. Understand the household rhythm. That quiet confidence feels strange, tiny, but real. Still, no amount of skill prevents exhaustion. As evening deepens, the bells somehow continue. Dinner service begins. Guests speak upstairs beneath warm candlelight. Laughter drifts through ceilings. Glasses clink softly. Elegant conversation fills rooms glowing with comfort. Below stairs? Chaos. Absolute chaos. Plates moving. Instructions shouted. Food prepared. Hands sore. Mind foggy. And yet strangely satisfied too. You survived the day. The bells rang. You answered. The household continued functioning. No disasters. Mostly. Tomorrow, of course, it begins again. Because somewhere inside the walls of this giant house, bells are sleeping too. Patiently waiting, ready to summon you all over again before you have fully recovered. Strangely full of secrets. The first thing you notice is how different people sound behind closed doors. At breakfast, everyone speaks politely. Measured. Calm. Proper. The family looks polished enough to belong inside paintings. But private conversations? Entirely different creatures. Arguments happen quietly here. Sharp whispers drifting beneath doors. Voices lowered just enough to preserve appearances. You hear fragments while carrying laundry upstairs. A disagreement about money. Someone worried about marriage arrangements. A son disappointing expectations. A daughter refusing certain social obligations. Tiny storms happening behind expensive wallpaper. Victorian families, you realize, still behave like families. Only with considerably more furniture. And somehow more emotional tension, hidden beneath politeness. One afternoon, while dusting outside a sitting room, you hear voices inside. Low. Urgent. A guest speaking softly with the mistress. You are not trying to listen. At least not officially. But when people speak directly beside doors, listening occasionally becomes unavoidable. Words drift through. Concern. Debt. Travel suddenly canceled. Something about appearances. Something about not letting others know. You continue dusting while pretending absolute ignorance. This is an important servant skill. Pretending not to notice things. Because you notice everything. You simply never admit it. Servants become accidental witnesses to entire lives, private disappointments, secret romances, financial worries, embarrassing mistakes, arguments over inheritances, friendships ending, engagements forming, and occasionally scandals dramatic enough to feel slightly unbelievable. Yet silence remains part of the job. What happens upstairs stays upstairs, mostly. Though downstairs gossip possesses extraordinary survival skills. Because while servants avoid open disrespect, information travels quickly. Very quickly. Especially during kitchen work. Someone hears raised voices. Someone else notices tears. Another servant spots letters burned unusually fast in the fireplace. Patterns emerge. Stories grow. Quiet theories form. Something's wrong with the eldest son, one maid whispers while peeling vegetables. How do you know? She cried during tea. You blink. That could mean anything. Yes, another says thoughtfully. But it usually means trouble. Everyone nods with surprising seriousness. You begin understanding something important. Servants, despite limited power, often understand households better than anyone. You see routines, mood changes, arguments hidden beneath polite smiles. You notice who stops speaking to whom, who spends too much time alone, who suddenly receives visitors, who avoids dinner. Observation becomes instinct. You know when tension enters rooms before words arrive. One evening, while serving tea, something awkward unfolds. Painfully awkward. The family hosts guests. Elegant room. Candles glowing. Tea perfectly arranged. Conversation flowing politely. Then one guest mentions marriage. Silence. Not dramatic silence, the worst kind. Careful silence. The kind full of invisible meaning. Someone clears their throat. Someone changes the subject too quickly. You stand beside the tray thinking, something happened here. Nobody explains. Nobody needs to. Rooms tell stories. You quietly leave. Still invisible. Still present. Still somehow collecting fragments of lives you never fully understand. Sometimes secrets feel sad. A mother quietly crying after receiving letters. A father sitting silently in his study, longer than usual. A daughter staring out windows with the specific expression of someone trapped between duty and hope. Victorian life looks elegant from outside. But elegance, you are learning, often hides exhaustion, pressure, loneliness, expectation. Not entirely different from servant life, strangely enough. Just decorated more beautifully. Other secrets feel smaller, petty arguments, tiny jealousies. Guests disliked for mysterious reasons. People pretending friendship while clearly disliking one another. Victorian politeness occasionally resembles warfare fought through compliments. Oh, what an interesting dress. Everyone smiles. Nobody relaxes. You quickly learn when to disappear. Tension makes rooms dangerous. The safest servants become almost ghost-like. Enter, serve, leave. No unnecessary movement, no opinions. No accidental interruptions, especially during arguments. One evening, while collecting empty glasses, you hear something sharp from another room. Raised voices. Not shouting exactly. Victorian people seem deeply committed to emotional restraint, but anger still exists. Just quieter. You pause. Only briefly. Long enough to hear footsteps. Then silence. The master exits moments later. Expression carefully neutral. You lower your eyes. Continue working. Neither of you acknowledges anything happened. That too becomes part of servant culture. You witness things, then politely erase yourself from the memory. Still, not every secret feels heavy. Sometimes, they are oddly human. Children sneaking sweets, the mistress hiding novels considered improper. The master pretending to dislike certain desserts while secretly eating extra portions. Tiny contradictions, private habits. Everyone becomes more ordinary when watched closely. Even wealthy people. Especially wealthy people. And somewhere during all this you notice something surprising about yourself too. You are changing. Growing more observant. Quieter perhaps. Sharper. You read moods faster now. Recognize footsteps. Predict difficult evenings before dinner begins. You know when doors close harder than usual. When silence means sadness instead of peace. When guests bring trouble. These are strange skills. Invisible skills. The kind history rarely notices. Outside, rain taps gently against windows. Inside, fireplaces glow warmly. The house settles into evening. Somewhere upstairs, piano music drifts softly through halls. Beautiful. Distant. For a moment, the house almost feels peaceful. You pause while folding linens. Just long enough to listen. Just long enough to imagine what life upstairs might feel like. Then someone calls your name. Reality returns. Another tray waits. Another room. Another conversation not meant for your ears. And so you continue through hallways full of polished floors and hidden emotions, quietly learning that large Victorian houses do not merely contain people. They contain entire secret worlds. And somehow, without ever truly belonging to them, you become one of the few people allowed to see behind the curtain. By now, the house has begun to feel like a world with no horizon. The same hallways, the same stairs, the same bells demanding impossible things at suspiciously inconvenient moments. Morning becomes afternoon. Afternoon becomes evening. Then somehow, without warning, morning arrives again. You begin measuring time differently, not by days, but by tasks. Cold day, laundry day, polishing day, guest day, the occasional terrifying unexpected inspection day. And somewhere inside this endless rhythm, something precious occasionally appears. A small escape, tiny, brief, fragile, but enough to remind you that the world outside the house still exists. Today, after hours of cleaning and carrying trays heavy enough to qualify as emotional burdens, the housekeeper gives permission for errands. Not freedom exactly. Victorian servants do not casually wander about enjoying spontaneous afternoons. No. This is purposeful movement. Responsible movement. You are sent to collect supplies from town. Bread, thread, soap. A message for another household. Still, stepping outside feels strangely wonderful. The front door closes behind you. And suddenly, air. Fresh, moving, outdoor air. Not kitchen heat, not coal smoke trapped inside curtains, not steam from endless laundry. Real air. The sky stretches overhead in soft gray. Clouds drift lazily. The street hums with life. And after spending so much time indoors, ordinary noise feels oddly exciting. Cartwheels rattle over stone roads. Vendors call to passing customers. Doors swing open. Conversations drift through chilly air. Children chase one another past shops. Someone laughs loudly nearby. A dog barks with great confidence despite possessing very little size. The city feels alive in ways the house never quite manages. You pull your shawl tighter. Walking quickly. Still careful. Servants represent households when outside. Behavior matters. Appearance matters. The housekeeper would somehow discover misbehavior through mysterious forces you choose not to question. You pass shop windows. Warm bread displayed behind glass. Fabric hanging neatly. Candles. Books. Pretty little objects that feel impossibly distant from your daily life. You pause briefly near a bakery. The smell nearly stops time. Fresh bread. Warm pastries. Something sweet. Your stomach immediately remembers breakfast happened approximately 6 years ago. Or at least it feels that way. You consider spending a coin. Then remember, coins matter. Every coin matters. Victorian wages for servants are not generous. Enough to survive, perhaps. Enough to help families sometimes. Enough to save slowly if fortune behaves kindly. But not enough for careless spending. So instead, you continue walking. Though emotionally, you remain beside the pastries. The market grows busier. Women carrying baskets. Workers hauling crates. Street sellers calling loudly about fruit, vegetables, ribbons, newspapers. A man selling roasted chestnuts fills the air with warmth and smoke. For a moment, life feels larger than the house, messier perhaps, louder. but somehow freer too. Nobody rings bells here. Nobody demands tea immediately. Nobody notices whether dust sits on bookshelves. The freedom feels tiny, but real. You stop briefly near a small square, only for a moment. Enough to breathe, enough to rest sore feet. Your body feels permanently tired now, the kind of tired that quietly settles behind your eyes. Still, outside carries a different energy. Possibility, perhaps. You overhear conversations drifting nearby, a woman discussing train travel, a man complaining about wages, teenagers laughing about something ridiculous. Ordinary life unfolding. You wonder what paths people choose when their days belong more fully to themselves. Could you someday leave service? Some servants do. Marriage, different work, small businesses, housekeeping, and gentler homes perhaps. Though uncertainty shadows those dreams. Life outside service offers no guarantees either. Still, hope arrives quietly sometimes. You pass another servant from a nearby house. Recognition happens instantly. Tired eyes, practical clothes. The unmistakable expression of someone who also spends unreasonable amounts of time carrying things upstairs. You exchange polite greetings. A few quick words. How's your house? She sighs dramatically. Guests. You both nod with complete understanding. No further explanation required. Then she adds, cook nearly declared war over pudding. You laugh softly, because somehow this feels entirely believable. There is comfort in shared suffering. An invisible community hidden across households. Thousands of servants quietly surviving Victorian expectations together. Eventually, duty calls again. Supplies purchased. Message delivered. Time to return. The house waits. Always waiting. As you approach, the large building rises ahead like responsibility itself. Windows glowing softly. Chimneys smoking. Elegant from outside. Demanding from within. For a brief moment, you hesitate near the gate. Just long enough to appreciate silence. Long enough to remember open sky. Then inside you go. Immediately warmth hits. Then noise. Kitchen sounds. Footsteps. Voices calling. The cook already annoyed about something. The housekeeper asking where the soap has gone. A bell ringing upstairs. Of course, freedom apparently expires quickly. You remove your shawl. Set down packages. Someone immediately asks for assistance carrying linens. Naturally. Still, something feels slightly lighter. The walk helped. Brief though it was. Even small escapes matter. A few quiet moments beyond walls. Fresh air. Ordinary streets. The reminder that life exists outside polished hallways and endless expectations. You return to work with tired feet but clearer thoughts. And strangely enough, the house feels a little less overwhelming now. Still exhausting. Still demanding. Still deeply committed to unnecessary staircases. But less suffocating, for now. Outside, evening slowly settles across the city. Lamps glow in windows. Cold air deepens. And inside the house, preparations begin for yet another long Victorian evening. Because rest unfortunately remains very far away. By evening, exhaustion no longer feels like a temporary condition. It feels like furniture, permanent, reliable, quietly present in every room of your body. Your feet ache with remarkable consistency. Your shoulders carry the memory of laundry buckets. Your hands smell faintly of soap, coal, and every chore ever invented. And still, somehow, the day continues. Because Victorian houses possess an extraordinary talent for pretending nighttime means relaxation, while secretly demanding several additional hours of labor first. Dinner service finally fades. Guests leave. Voices upstairs soften. Candles burn lower. The grand house begins settling into nighttime quiet. At least for the family. For servants, nighttime simply means different work. You clear dishes, stack silver, carry trays downstairs, more cleaning, always more cleaning. Dining rooms must return to perfection before morning. Glass polished. Crumbs removed. Napkins folded. Candles replaced. Evidence of human activity erased with suspicious efficiency. You move carefully through rooms, glowing softly in fading candlelight. The house feels different now, quieter, almost thoughtful. Large Victorian homes at night carry strange personalities. Hallways stretch longer somehow. Floorboards sound louder. Fireplaces crackle softly in distant rooms. Shadows move strangely against wallpaper. Not frightening exactly. Just lonely. You begin noticing how silent the wealthy parts of the house become after dark. Bedrooms upstairs. Doors closed, warmth hidden behind thick curtains. Meanwhile, downstairs remains awake. The kitchen still alive with leftover work. Someone washing dishes. Someone folding linens. Someone muttering complaints directed vaguely toward difficult guests. The cook finally sits for the first time all day and looks emotionally offended by existence. Nobody blames her. You help tidy the kitchen. Hands slower now. Energy fading. Conversations quieter. Everyone tired enough that even complaining requires effort. Still, small jokes survive. One maid glances at an impossible pile of dishes. "I think they ate enough for 3 kingdoms," she mutters. Someone replies, "Yes," and somehow still asks for more pudding. Soft laughter spreads through the room. Tiny moments again, little sparks keeping exhaustion from completely winning. Eventually, finally, the work slows, not finished, never fully finished, but slower. And now another deeply unfortunate reality of Victorian servant life arrives: personal comfort. Or rather, the surprising lack of it. Because after spending the entire day helping wealthy people remain comfortable, you now return to conditions considerably less glamorous. Bathing first. Or something loosely resembling bathing. Victorian hygiene exists, technically. But comfort remains negotiable. No warm modern shower waits patiently for you. No relaxing bath prepared with scented soaps and candles. No. You receive water in bowls. Cold water if fortune behaves badly. Lukewarm water if fortune briefly remembers your existence. You wash quickly, hands first, face, arms. Enough to feel human again. Sort of. Winter makes everything harder. Cold settles into rooms immediately. Water chills quickly. The entire experience feels less refreshing, and more like participating in polite suffering. Still, cleanliness matters. Even servants must remain presentable. Especially servants. Appearance reflects discipline. Discipline reflects respectability. Victorian society deeply enjoys connecting morality to whether someone looks tidy. You dry your face. Change clothing. Simple clothing, practical, worn. Nothing luxurious. The attic room waits upstairs. You climb slowly now. Very slowly. Stairs feel crueler at night. Every muscle notices them. The servant quarters sit tucked high inside the house, hidden away where comfort seems politely discouraged. The room is small, shared, cold, always slightly drafty, beds narrow, blankets rough, privacy almost imaginary. Still, after a day like this, even an uncomfortable bed begins looking strangely magnificent. Other servants drift in gradually. Everyone quieter at night, energy nearly gone. Someone rubs aching feet. Someone yawns dramatically. Another person sits staring into nothingness for several seconds, before quietly saying, "I forgot what day it is." Nobody laughs. Mostly because everyone understands. The days blur here, work blending endlessly together. You sit carefully on the edge of the bed. Every movement slower now. Outside. Wind taps gently against windows. Rain perhaps. Or branches brushing glass. The sounds feel oddly comforting. The world outside continuing softly while the house settles into sleep. Conversation drifts lazily. Tiny stories from the day. Someone embarrassed themselves, carrying soup. Someone nearly cried during laundry. Someone overheard yet another family argument upstairs. Shared exhaustion turns strangers into companions. Not close friends always, but something close enough. People surviving together. That matters. Eventually, candles dim. One by one. Darkness grows softer. The room quiets. Someone coughs. Someone mutters half-asleep nonsense. The building creaks around you like an old creature finally resting. You pull rough blankets higher. Cold still finds ways inside. Of course it does. Victorian buildings seem emotionally committed to drafts. Still, lying here after endless hours of labor feels strangely peaceful, not comfortable exactly, but peaceful. You think about the day, the bells, the endless cleaning, the laundry, the streets outside, the strange hidden sadness inside wealthy rooms. You wonder how long people stay in service. Years? Entire lives? Could tomorrow feel easier? Perhaps. Though likely not, still. You survived today. That counts for something. Your eyes grow heavy. Sleep finally arriving. Slow. Patient. The house quiet now. Almost entirely. Then, a bell rings faintly downstairs. You freeze. Everyone freezes. Silence. A long pause. Then someone groans quietly. Not me, another whispers into darkness. Eventually footsteps move somewhere below. Someone else answering. Relief spreads through the room. Tiny, selfish relief. Because tonight, at least for this moment, the bell belongs to someone else. You settle deeper beneath blankets. Outside, darkness stretches quietly across the sleeping city. And inside this great demanding house, you finally drift toward sleep knowing morning will arrive far too soon. Because in Victorian service, rest is never permanent, only borrowed.